Hey there, Miss King here, and in this screencast we're going to be looking at the characteristics of living things. To start, we need to talk about what science is. Science is an organized way of using evidence to learn about the natural world. We would use the scientific method to gather evidence, do experiments, and kind of learn about the things around us that we're interested in, knowing how they work and why they're there. The goal of science is to investigate and understand the things around us, and that's going to help us in explaining things and also using those explanations to make predictions. A good example of why we need to do science so that we can make predictions is think about the flu virus. Many of us have had the flu before. But it took many, many years for scientists to figure out what it was and why it made people sick, how it works. And today we can use what we know about that virus and how it makes people sick to make a prediction about the types of vaccines that we need each year to help fight the disease. So science is really important in helping to learn things about diseases and how things work and how we can use that information to help ourselves live longer. So biology is a field of science. There are many, many fields of science, but biology is the field that we're going to study this year in class. If you use your word parts, bio means living and logy means the study of something. So literally, biology is the study of living things. So what exactly is it that makes something alive? What does it mean to be alive? Well, that's what we're going to look at in this lesson. The first characteristic that a living thing must have is DNA. All living things have to have DNA. That's our genetic code where our traits and genes are represented. The DNA tells our bodies what it's supposed to look like and how it's supposed to work. So all living things must have DNA. The second characteristics of living things is reproducing. All living things need to be able to reproduce on their own without help. There's two kinds of reproduction. The first kind is sexual reproduction, and sexual reproduction means there's going to be two parents involved, and the offspring is not going to be identical to either parent. The offspring will have some of the traits from mom and some of the traits from dad. So it won't be an identical copy of either mom or dad. It will be different. Humans, most animals reproduce sexually. A lot of plants reproduce sexually. Pollen is actually plant sperm. So the yellow stuff on your car is the plants. They're in the process of reproducing. Asexual reproduction means that there's only going to be one parent, and the offspring, because there's only one parent, will be identical to its parent. Some types of plants, like ferns that use spores, reproduce asexually. This little guy right here is called a hydra. This is the image of the hydra, and it's a little pond creature, and hydras reproduce asexually by a process called budding. And you can see right here this little piece that sticks out from the hydra is actually a baby hydra, and he's just kind of growing out of the side of the mama hydra. So eventually he will grow and grow until he reaches a size large enough to break off and become its own organism. And bacteria also reproduce asexually through a process called binary fission. And what they do is when the bacteria gets big enough, it will just split into two. And so each time the bacteria reproduces, it just splits itself into two. The next characteristic that all living things must possess to be considered alive is cells. All living things must have cells. The cells are basically the building blocks of your body. Um, Everything that goes on in a cell is a life process that needs to take place in order to keep you alive. So all living things must have cells. There's lots of different kinds of cells: animal cells, plant cells, fungus cells. Um, there's single cells and multicellular organisms. So cells are what make up living things. The next characteristic, all living things need to be able to grow and develop. Unicellular organisms, those are organisms that only have one cell that makes up their whole body. They grow by simply getting bigger. So the cell just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And bacteria, here's a couple of pictures of bacteria, are examples of unicellular organisms. Multicellular organisms, these are organisms that have many cells that make up their body. These are organisms that grow by, first their cells get bigger, but then the cells are going to divide and add more cells. So multicellular organisms have trillions and trillions of cells that make up the whole body. The fifth characteristic of living things is energy. All living things must be able to obtain and use energy. So the sun is our source for all the energy that living things need. We can either get our energy from plants. Plants can take the energy from the sun and turn it directly into food. Or we can get it indirectly by eating plants or eating other animals, which got their energy from the sun. So the sun is the source for all energy of living things. The sixth characteristic of life is responding to the environment. Living things need to be able to recognize changes that occur in their environment. A change is called a stimulus, and then they need to be able to respond to that change so that their body stays the same. So, for example, if it's cold outside, your body will respond by shivering. We don't want our bodies to get too cold. We have to keep a steady temperature, which is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So if we go outside and it's cold, our body temperature could drop. So to keep that from happening, we shiver to generate heat and keep our body temperature from dropping. The opposite is also true. If we go outside and it's really hot, we don't want our body temperature to go too high. So to keep our temperature stable at 98.6 degrees, we can sweat, and that sweat will carry away some of our body heat. So we have to be able to recognize a change or a stimulus and then respond to it to keep our bodies from getting out of its normal state. The last characteristic of living things is called metabolism. Metabolism is literally all the chemical reactions that occur inside of an organism. This helps to maintain homeostasis. If you use your word parts, homeo means same and stasis means a state of being. So literally it's keeping the same state of being. We want our bodies to stay the same all the time. We don't want them to change. So those chemical reactions that occur help keep our bodies stable and within the same state of being. Some examples that we have are digestion. When you eat food and it goes into your stomach, it gets broken down. So those are a bunch of chemical reactions occurring. Some synthesis reactions. Your cells have to be able to make certain proteins and certain body parts, so those chemical reactions are called synthesis reactions. Excretion and respiration deal with things like turning your food into energy. So all of those chemical reactions are a part of your metabolism. What does that look like? Well, this is a very simple diagram of what metabolism actually look like. This is a whole lot of chemical reactions going on. There's literally thousands of chemical reactions that are occurring every second of every day in your body to keep you alive. And that's a whole lot of chemical reactions. So, now that you know the 7 characteristics that all living things must possess to be considered alive, I would like for you to think about this question: is fire alive? And when we talk about characteristics in class, we will share some of our thoughts on whether or not fire is a living thing.